Okay, good afternoon everybody. Hi, my name is Kevin Nerona from Oracle and welcome to a webinar on Oracle's world-class end-to-end planning and budgeting cloud service. This is the third of 4 installments, with the focus of this session being reviewing scenario planning options within Oracle's planning and budgeting cloud. If you have any questions or issues during the session, please feel free to post them using the chat facility in your remote WebEx session window, and I'll endeavour to answer them at the end of the session, else reply via your registered email. Session is around 45 minutes. As with the other sessions, there's lots to cover, so let's make a quick start. Okay, as usual, we'll just quickly review the objectives, and we will have some new attendees to this session that haven't attended the previous webinars. So I'd like to briefly replay the 2 sessions beforehand, with just replaying the overall concepts behind Oracle's Planning and Budgeting Cloud, and we'll focus the live demonstration on the various scenario planning options within the system, hopefully leaving you with a clear understanding on where the overall service, including the modelling options, can add value within your organisation. Okay, so let's go with the recap, and we as usual, we started off with some of the typical planning and budgeting issues within systems such as maybe Microsoft Excel, whereby you're planning using that particular tool, or maybe another third-party tool that might not have all the capability required, or potentially not implemented as you would have liked. So we suggested, especially with Excel, we had lots of flat spreadsheets, 2D spreadsheets, often thousands of complex linked formulas, carrying a very high risk for error, leading to a mistrust in the numbers, for example, significant reporting lag due to that, checks, rechecks on the numbers. And we also said that I did like spreadsheets, and very useful in a concise manner with a grid of data, maybe a couple of lookups. But when we were running a multi-million-pound transactional budget and forecast with many versions, then maybe it wasn't the right tool to rely upon, and we'd often need lots of manpower and time to make it possible at all. Audit and traceability was often a problem. Scenario planning, which we'll be focusing on today, it was often very difficult, if not impossible. And really the central key issue we suggested was that it took a long time to get the data from the various business units together in front of the strategic managers, the people responsible for making decisions, and quite often decisions might be taken on an outdated set of data. So what if we could think about maybe just elevating what we were doing currently, maybe in spreadsheets, to a fit-for-purpose 3D cube, meaning we could instantly consolidate data as soon as we press the save button. Immediate reporting from that one robust source of the truth, real-time scenario planning from that one data source, and robust analysis and data that you can trust, hopefully leading to clearer, correct decisions taken at a much earlier stage in the planning cycle. We also suggested that maybe we could enhance what you were doing and take advantage of some of the hundreds of best practice templates and reports and dashboards in the enterprise version of this software. Those templates are being used by thousands of global customers, and we've got built-in assistive technologies such as artificial intelligence to help support your decision making within the system, and that really was the thought behind, could we leverage that sort of emerging technology, and with this being held on the cloud, this system being held on the cloud, we would have the ability to, at a much more rapid pace, take advantage of any new upgrades, emerging technologies that were being fed into the system, because we would be on a monthly and quarterly update cycle, rather than having to wait for an upgrade every 4 to 5 years and being left behind the curve. So the cloud offering allowed you to take advantage of the enhancements far quicker, and we likened it to your mobile phone apps, which were updated on a very regular basis. So getting rid of the complex spreadsheets, all those formulas, the reliance on those couple of individuals that were in the organisation that might be the only ones who were capable of managing those spreadsheets, de-risking that, and also allowing the budget holders then to maybe get more engaged because there was a simple, clear interface for them to self-serve some of the information and contribute to the budget and feel connected to the budget decisions, and so the budget holders then maybe felt like finance were more like business partners rather than a service to be relied upon or handed off to. So that was our thought process. We then got into Oracle planning and budgeting as a concept, and this simple diagram here at the bottom right hopefully describes this in a nice, clear manner, where we suggested we had these fit for ppurpose 3D cubes of data, almost like Rubik's cubes, held in the cloud, and they were pretty much like all your spreadsheets put on top of each other, but directly linked, automatically linked using the cube. So there weren't any formulas. There were not any lookups that were only in one spreadsheet and not in another. In fact, we could just twist this Rubik's cube, add another year on, for example, and those formulas would just ripple right through the cube, keeping it robust and trustworthy. We needed to feed it data, and quite often we would look at our ERP system. That could be Oracle's Fusion Cloud. It could be another ERP system that we could easily hook into, very easy to map to those data sources. And we'd often take the budgeting hierarchies across as a start point, the actuals, historic actuals, this year's actuals, maybe some historic budgets into the system. We might want to think about activity data to support those balances. So often payroll data would be pretty key in the public sector. That could be, at individual name level, or maybe at band or grade level, and maybe social care data. Adult social care data from a system like Liquid Logic, for example, again to support those particular balances, and maybe go on to drive calculations, as we'll go on to see today in the scenario plan. Users would then access their parts of the data in this cube very simply, usually through a hierarchy, usually the cost center hierarchy, the organizational hierarchy. So one user might have one cost center to look after, or maybe one department to look after, or one or many cost centers, and they would review their data, whether that be a budget plan, a medium-term forecast, maybe an in-month forecast, maybe contribute to those numbers, add some comments for variances, maybe add a forecast in for the rest of the year, and then they could submit that data up through the hierarchy for approval or rejection. And once the data had been approved, maybe in a monthly cycle, maybe in an annual budget preparation cycle, then we were able to report directly from that one source of the truth immediately, instantly, as you'll go on to see. So that was the real concept. It's really just bringing everything together in one trustworthy area, rather than having lots of information or siloed information dotted around your organisation. Okay, so let's have a quick recap on the previous demos. I'll just dive into the system and have a look at, quickly scan through what we looked at before. So firing into the Oracle Planning and Budgeting Cloud. And it will take me to the login screen. It's all web-based in the cloud. So fire up. I'll log in as an administrator, which will give me access to lots of icons here, lots of tools. That would be restricted as per your user. But as an end user, you might come in, for example, have a look at the tasks that are due today, nice and clear as to what I need to do. I've got detailed instructions. I need to prepare a baseline for my medium-term financial plan. I need to create a bottom-up version of that, and I need to submit that particular budget in my area. So it's telling me I need to do that. I've also got the ability to maybe have a look at a beginning of day dashboard, see how I'm doing. Gives me analysis on my particular area. So these are the actuals that are going through my system. I can flick that round to look at some of the high level account codes, maybe expand on that and drill down to the account code detail. Look at some statistics as well. I've got some payroll statistics in here, so some headcount, savings plans, some overtimes. Very easy to create these. I'll go on to show you how easy that is a little bit later. If I go back to my main task area, well, what we did was focus in on this tasks card, this tasks icon, which was essentially a more detailed version of my immediate tasks to undertake. So if I click on that, that enabled me to demo various areas of the system, including my medium-term financial plan, which we focused on, the annual budget, in-year monitoring, forecasting, and some reports as well. So you can create this so it's nice and easy for the users to understand exactly what they need to do. As I expand down on my medium-term financial plan, this is where we focused on for our 2 sessions. We suggested we had a nice clear task plan to go down to get through until we were able to get right to the bottom and submit for approval. And it was easy for us to be able to see that as an end user how we were doing. So for example, if I review my instructions, these are the instructions that I've got as a hyperlink, maybe it's a Word document. I can then dive in, select that that's complete, and I can just click next to just jump to the next task, or close and go back. And when I did complete that first task, if I just close out of that window, if I refresh, I can see that that's turned green, and that tells me how I'm doing my particular task. We focused in on prepare the baseline. That was a really simple form that helps us understand a bit about data entry, which was nice. So for example, I might start off with a clear baseline, so with nothing at all. And as you can see there, what I can do is actually right click and invoke rules as an end user. So I can right click and maybe seed the baseline with previous years, or clear the baseline completely. So I don't have to just type in my numbers. I can actually set up rules that end users can invoke to more rapidly get their forecasts and budgets into the system. I'm in the finance area here. I've got lots of account codes on the left hand side. In fact, there's lots of detail here. I've got my last year's budget, the next year's, and +1 and +2. And behind here there's a lot of detail that I've collapsed and I can expand on. So here's the makeup of the last budget, including environments, recurring and non-recurring. And I can also expand on my time series, my calendar. So there's my year total. But if I want to break down by quarters or even periods, I can do that very easily. Let me just collapse that back again. So if I invoke my seed baseline with previous year rule, that will allow me to just very quickly get some numbers as per last year. So an incremental based view here. And you can see here there's a bit of a difference between my premises related expenditure, 410 last year, but it's copied across 412. And it's because in the rules I've suggested that the environments that were placed in the system were non-recurring. So those rules can take into account those types of situations. Data entry was really simple. Of course, I could just type in a number. That was pretty easy to do. But I could also drag across that number. Maybe flash that across those 3. I could do things like, instead of just typing in numbers, I could click on this total expenditure summary number. That could be the total postage costs for your entire organizations, for example. Click on the data icon, helpful menu here, and I could say, well, why don't we uplift that? A top-down budget, I want to reduce that by 10% in this particular area, and really quickly I can get a spread across all my account codes in my area, either proportionally as per the numbers that are there already. Maybe I want to spread that as per last year's budget, last year's actuals. Maybe I just want to evenly split it, or maybe just fill it with a number, just repeat it with a number across my account code. So really quickly I can get a top-down budget, and that's really useful in scenario planning. If I had copies of this data, I could carry out a few scenario plans with different percentages that we'll go on to see. I could also filter in here, so easy for me to say just show me anything greater than, let's say, 100,000, and maybe just keep those entries, go on to filter again if I wanted to. So some nice tools to help me get on with my forecasting in the system and get it done very quickly and accurately. We then dropping into session 2, we looked at activity-based budgeting. So rather than just punching in numbers here, and by the way, you have got a full audit trail behind here. So the audit of who's updated this number, when they've updated that number, would just carry on here, and you'd see how this number had changed. And I can also add any comments and attachments to support my numbers. So I'll just show you that, put in the word test here. As I go on to carry on, or other users contribute to this particular area, these comments then grow, and these comments are reportable. So on your final reports, you will be able to pull out these comments in your reports. So everything in one area will be able to be reported on nice and robustly. So yeah, we talked about activity to support some of these balances, and we started off with the employee costs line. You can see here that that's greyed out. If I right click on that, what I've got is a linked sheet called Review Employees that's embedded within the system, and that's just one sheet that I've created within the system, and it links across all the organizational cost centers. So I'm not having repeated sheets in spreadsheets, it's just one sheet, and it just depends on where I'm looking, which is the finance cost center. If I click on Review Employees, the detail for that balancing entry on the front sheet is here, and it's asking me to build up that number because this is an important part of cost in my organization. I need to build up this number. So quite often this would be a load as a start point from your payroll system, maybe once a month if you're doing monthly forecasting, maybe once a year if you're about to start your budget preparation round, and then the users would typically interact with this and suggest, well, Kevin Richardson, for example, is going to change grade, and that would then have an effect on his salary, also maybe his NI, his pension, his pension scheme. I can put lots of different formulas and lookups in here to make sure that activity, be it payroll activity, is automatically calculated. So all the end user has to do is think about the actual occurrence of what's going to happen in the organisation, leaving the financials to the system. I can add, I can suggest that this particular individual is going to be on paternity leave, leave of absence, for example. I can add in, I can again invoke business rules as an end user to maybe transfer an employee, amend an employee, add a new hire, take into account vacancies, for example, incremental drift. I can even review the assumptions that might be useful to see what the NI rates and thresholds look like. And of course, when I go on to scenario plan, again, that can be very useful in terms of pay awards and modelling pay award rates, for example. So yeah, useful in terms of bridging the activity to the baseline. And when I press save, that detail immediately summarises to that balance. So it's all in the system, it's all linked, it's robust and trustworthy, and I can report on the different levels of detail that make up these numbers, either the balance level, either the notes behind it, either the activity behind it. We also looked at adult social care as well, and I'll be focusing on this on my scenario planning actually, but what we did see in session 2 is we suggested that I had got an example here where I had an adult social care council apportionment value, which was the makeup of the adult social care total cost minus all the contributions. So how was I going to calculate that? Well, we started off with a linked sheet that had the basis of the latest import from my adult social care system. So all the detail, it is obfuscated, anonymized here. I just pulled in a couple of columns, but of course you could have different columns if you wanted to. And then again, we could interact with this, change some values, change some costs, change assumptions, add in different cases. And what I decided to do in my particular demonstration was then, and I say that because you might design this in a different way, is then summarize that information using another linked spreadsheet. So it then collated those number of applications into the different categories of care in my particular example, and those applications that had savings that were below 14,000 and on a sliding scale. And then I was able to calculate some user contributions, maybe the health contributions. And then what I did in my particular example was then go on to overlay the population statistics. So how the population might rise in my particular area, births, mortality, population projection, and I was able to calculate using the detail sheets the average population needs for adult social care. So all the detail before this, the adult social care data, and the average tariff. That's just a broad assumption which again could be in more detail if you wanted it to. And that then allowed me to drive calculations upon save that were in the system automatically. So again, as the end user, just deciding what actually might happen in my particular area, and when I press save, the system then calculates the financials based on the assumptions that we've put into the system, and that will then drive the balances in a linked manner back to our original medium-term financial plan, and that's then dropped in those numbers, and I can always get back to the detail and change it, assuming that it's not finalised and submitted. And then we drilled into a very simple detailed example, which was the properties and repairs. So another linked sheet below this, slightly more simple to allow us to show off the embedded artificial intelligence in the system that you'll will get out of the box. So here I've got some property numbers, some historic information, and then a forecast going across, a very detailed forecast going across 2 budget years, as you can see there, with all the monthly detail, average property value, and a property maintenance charge. And of course I could go in and use my my data tab and uplift those numbers across very quickly, but what I've also got is, if I right click as a supportive tool, I've got this embedded predictive planning. Now if I click on that, what it does is then allow me to run my prediction, the automated prediction in the system. This uses time series analysis used in the commercial sector. Sainsbury's and Tesco's use this tool for planning their ice cream sales, for example, seasonally. If I click on the details here of the prediction, I'll explain this in a second, you can see the prediction methods that it's used, Amira and Samira. These are well-known commercial sector prediction models. And you can have this running in the bottom of the screen wherever you click on. So it could be predicting on properties, expenditure on supplies and services, wherever you click on. It's a dynamic supportive tool. And just to explain what it's showing you here, on the left hand side here, this is the history, the green line. That's what's happened in the past. It smoothed out a few anomalies. My current forecast is this red line here, very straight. But it's suggesting the prediction is this blue line here. So I'm a little bit off at the moment, which it's warning me about. I might not want to do anything about that, but I might want to investigate a little bit more. If I click on settings here, I'm able to put in a best case and a worst case. Maybe put in my own little growth curve if I want to. Edit that maybe to 1.5 or maybe 1%. Press apply and see what that looks like. So it runs a prediction for me, puts in the best case and the worst case. So top line is the best case, bottom orange line is the worst case. There's my growth or my particular growth curve that I put in, and you can interact with this. So I might want to reduce my best case ever so slightly. You can see that my current forecast is very close to my worst case. So what it's doing is warning me, suggesting here that I am very highly going to or potentially breach the prediction. So yeah, if that's okay and I've got some internal knowledge, then fair enough. But if I think more needs to be done, that maybe I'd like to use the function to be able to copy the prediction to my forecast as a start point. So I can press paste there, and notice these lines then move at the bottom as the prediction then marries up to my forecast. The risk goes right down, gives me a start point as per the system prediction, and maybe then I go and update a few different months that I know locally that something's definitely going to happen. Maybe has some notes to support that, but the system has helped me hopefully make a much more informed decision. So that comes along with the system, and there's some exciting new developments to this as well that I'll go on to talk about a little bit later to make it even more powerful. So we went on to talk about that, and then just to quickly finish up on what we recapped on or what we reviewed before. What we suggested is that we had lots of other tasks to look at, and we clicked next and completed on those tasks. The next task was actually to review my establishment to make sure I had done that, although we've already done it before. Just to mention here, we also suggested that on any form we had the ability to export to Excel. Of course, you'd expect that, spreadsheet export, but with the Oracle Planning and Budgeting Cloud, you get a more powerful version of this. So the accountants that still want to work in Excel Of course, the web view is much seems a much better fit for end users like budget holders, but spreadsheet functions are always going to have their place. You can open this particular form in Smart View, which is essentially a plugin for Microsoft Office that goes way beyond much other plugins that are potentially on the market as well. So if I just log in here, I do have to log in because I could dive in just directly via Excel or Word or PowerPoint rather than going through the system. So there it is. It looks very, very similar, and in fact this particular interface to the cloud, the Excel interface to the cloud rather than the web interface to the cloud, it has all of the key functions that you might expect, all the filters. I can even look at my tasks, for example. If I change Kimberly Lee to another grade, let's say grade 21, and submit that data to the cloud, notice that if I go to my web view and I refresh, Kimberly immediately becomes grade 21. So they are one and the same. They're pointing to the same thing. It's just a different interface. You can do your pivots, your graphs here, but you get all the benefits of being able to work on the cloud rather than working locally on your individual spreadsheet. So yeah, we mentioned that. We then went through our different tasks on the web, clicking on next. I won't take you through all of that, but essentially clicking through all these tasks here, getting right to the end. We did have a quick look at these three here, so maybe a different view by service rather than account code, so I can see who's doing what when in my different areas. And we had a quick look at allocations. So once you've finished your budgets, you might want to allocate these costs out in various ways. So either maybe your human resources costs, maybe your estates and facilities costs, and you might want to apportion that as per a statistic, either a head count, maybe floor space. Upon pressing save, that would do that for you automatically. And then when I click on next, it would just automatically go to the submission of let me just click out of that, the submission of my my particular budget. So submit for approval, and I could then submit this budget up to my my manager for approval or rejection. And this this is a helpful tool, the workflow. It doesn't have to be something you incorporate straight away. The promotion of budgets, the sign off of budgets, allowing the organisation to really get involved and connect with the finance budgeting decisions. Finance will always be in control, but it allows the organisation to feel connected and responsible, let's say, for the budgets that are created. I can also make comments, attach documents. I can see a full workflow trail of where my budget is sitting and where the end approval might sit. So a nice tool to be able to help promote and close those plans far quicker than before. And then last of all, we touched on preparing your budget. We had a quick look at preparing your budget in not very much detail at all. In fact, we just looked at one form, very similar to the medium-term financial plan. In fact, your next year budget would be the start point of that would be the next year medium-term financial plan, so you could automatically do that and then go on to create your next year budget in as much detail or as high level as you wanted, either breaking these out into savings, inflation, or just a flat budget here. And I'm able to then profile that budget very, very easily, either by just updating the final year column or by using a drop down to be able to then invoke the different seasonal profile that I wanted. And then we looked at forecasting in a similar vein, and just to mention what we looked at there, so in-year monitoring, diving down there, the first task in my in-year monitoring might just be to review my position and just suggest that I've completed that. And we've got a nice dashboard here that we've created. Very easy to create these, telling me how I'm doing in terms of premises, transport, supports and services, third-party payments. Might need some reviewing as it's getting to red. I can interact with this dashboard, maybe look at the employee cost trend, budgets versus forecasts. And if I just quickly show you how easy it is, we did look at how easy it was to create these dashboards. This is the dashboard creation area, so this is the dashboard that we just looked at, and if I go into edit mode, I've got that ability under my role. I can very quickly create another dashboard, for example, or another part of the dashboard. If I just drag a bar graph onto there, for example, that just immediately updates. I could then go into the settings, change the width, the height, change the data that it's looking at, currently at sample data. Maybe I want to look at the account breakdown. I could even add commentary area, maybe a URL to an intranet page or an internet page. So really easy to do. Back to my tasks here in my in-year forecasting. We then looked at environments as well, environments in the system. You can create environments forms to transfer budgets. We looked at prepare forecasts as well, which was a very similar thought process. You will have your own way of doing this, but we decided to create a form that had actuals, read-only for historic numbers, and then the ability to create your forecast. And again, you could evoke automatic rules to create your forecast. Use the predictive planning as well to help create your forecast very quickly, and then add any local adjustments. So making use of the tools that we'd already seen. And the beauty of then approving all that data meant that your reports would just automatically be generated from that one data source. So whenever you decided to review the report at the end of the planning cycle or during the planning cycle, I could just invoke a corporate report. And this is a web reporting tool that comes pre-packaged. You'll be able to design your pixel perfect reports to then distribute either via email. You can burst these reports out to end users using email if that's what you wanted, or of course with the online version they could just log in and have a look at the report. In fact, you can interact with these reports, export them into that smart view that I was talking about, or drill down if you wanted to. Here's my variance reports. I've got a couple of other reports I can just very quickly show you here. So down in the reports here, you can make these reports interactive if the users are viewing the reports online. So I've got a bit of a report dashboard here. I can drill down into social work, for example, and get a bit more information there. I can also drill down into my employee detail. Maybe I've got that all in the system, so I can link across to my employee establishment detail and review my salary. So I'm not having lots of reports, lots of data in siloed areas. It's all in one system in the Oracle Cloud. Just one more thing on reporting we finished up on. The other way around, going in via Excel, maybe Word, maybe PowerPoint, we can make use of that Smart View Excel plugin. So for example, for regulatory reports like the RA return for councils, this is something that you might have to fill out. We could have a sheet that immediately refreshes from the cloud, pulling in the latest information, and then you can have your lookups, your sum ifs, then pull in the right information. And you might not fill out 100% of this form, but hopefully 70-80% of it will get done far quicker than you might have done before. Using Word, you could even think about creating your annual report or a narrative report far quicker by pulling in not just the numbers but also the commentary into a report automatically. And again, just refreshing that using the Smart View plugin. So useful, hopefully a good refresher as to what we were looking at before. And just before we go on to scenario planning, what we did do is just mention the enterprise version of this product, which comes with 4 pre-packaged frameworks. So content out of the box, a financials framework, pretty much what we looked at in terms of demonstration, income and expenditure, the workforce planning, so the activity payroll based planning. We've got forms, graphs, dashboards. We've also got a capital work framework and a projects framework. So the capital framework really looking at the ability for you to be able to plan new capital projects, but also monitor capital projects in terms of depreciation. So actually this particular model will cross your balance sheet and income and expenditure. So as you create a new asset in your budget, the depreciation, the disposals will hit the I&E as required throughout the different years, and the balance sheet will be updated accordingly as well. So these are all linked frameworks. Projects as well, in terms of creating new projects, monitoring new projects, looking at paybacks, ROIs of projects, approving new projects, again linked with the other frameworks. So pulling in new employees to work on these projects can be done from your employees framework. Any assets that you've created in your capital framework can be pulled into the project and all tied up and interlinked, making a plan far more robust and joined up. We also had an example of a cash flow projection here, just in general, and creating your cash flow statements, cash flow projections, making sure that you've got the right resource at the right time. We mentioned performance reporting as well, so not just creating those final reports, but also having a tool to be able to manage the creation of those final reports. So maybe the introduction, maybe the executive summary could all be created within and approved within performance reporting, getting rid of any emails, any lag in terms of approving those final reports and bringing it into the system. And we mentioned the analytics cloud, which allowed you to take the analysis that you've seen, those dashboards, one step further. So rather than just using the information in the planning and budgeting cloud, you could connect very quickly, in fact at a click of a button, to other sources of information, maybe housing information, for example. Information that you didn't necessarily want loaded to the planning and budgeting cloud in a more structured way. You just wanted to pull in data, overlay it, mash it up and see what the system could predict. And you could do that very quickly and have it instantly available in the analytics cloud using apps like this, the day-by-day cloud. So if I just forward through here, very quick to be able to just filter through and just pull through the data that you wanted. So as I write it in natural language, it's producing the filters for me and showing me the revenue in my particular area, the expenditure in my particular area. I can even use the voice commands to be able to just drop in a particular question and pull back the information on the go, allowing me to review my numbers as and when I wanted, rather than having to wait to be in the office. And then finally, we just also mentioned a very powerful piece of kit called Data Visualizer in the Analytics Cloud that allowed me to drag and drop the different areas in my analytics, my different data sets into graphs. But we had a look at this natural language report creation. You can see it's generating your final report, your summary, your narrative, automatically using artificial intelligence around the graphs that you're generating. As a start point, of course, you might want to go and amend that, but incredible that it can start doing that for you, really reducing that planning cycle timeline and allowing you to analyze more than you spend time analyzing rather than spend time creating these reports. So moving on to scenario planning, just to mention or to add to what we've already talked about in the first two sessions. If you agree, probably a very pertinent subject. We have our fair share of uncertainty around us, rising cost of social care, trade wars around the world, not to mention Brexit, of course, in an ever faster changing world. Scenario planning seems ever more important. We need to be able to keep on top of these changes and be able to efficiently scenario plan and focus on answering the critical questions as soon as they arise, rather than having to wait for the changes to happen. So, questions like how you're going to hit a particular target, who is accountable for achieving particular results, more importantly, why were the results you achieved different from those that you expected? Why did you forecast incorrectly, for example? Could we help forecast a bit better? So asking those questions is one thing, but gaining insight into the answers, I suppose, is far more important. And I suppose when you overlay the scenario planning thought with the activity-based budgeting techniques we talked about in the second session, it starts to become really quite a powerful planning solution where we can start getting underneath the organisation and understanding the key drivers of change and move away from the kind of broad generalizations about the future, and start getting a clear-cut decisions focused on the activity, the organisational activity, rather than just the financial numbers. So using Excel or maybe a lesser system to achieve what I've mentioned there, I suppose is to scenario plan might pose a high risk in terms of having to kind of manually copy lots of data sets, around siloed data sets, into maybe Excel, and then trying to manipulate those hundreds if not thousands of formulas in one scenario, then trying to compare scenarios in different workbooks with an awful lot of data, and then trying to come up with a final scenario and combining that with the final plan. If you agree, it would be difficult at best, and maybe because of those issues, maybe scenario planning just isn't undertaken as much as it could be, to be able to accurately plan and allow the organisation to understand what the latest strategies are in the organisation, filter that down really quickly to the people on the ground to say, look, we've had a look, these are the changes, this is what we need to do to react. So let's see how Oracle, the Oracle Planning and Budgeting Cloud, can actually help you achieve what I've talked about. Let's have a look. So diving back in, and what I'm going to do is stick within the same area. I'll just refresh this so it collapses and it looks a little bit neater. Excuse me. There's a couple of methods of scenario planning in this system, and I'll just take you through some of the options just so you've got an understanding. I'll start off with a really simple option, but it's a viable option and something to bear in mind. In our medium-term financial plan, we've got a concept in this particular demo system of preparing a baseline. We've looked at that. And in fact, that baseline, you can think of it as a data bucket, a budget bucket. It's called baseline, and we're creating numbers in that baseline. It's a version of the truth. We've also, in my demo system, got a budget bucket, a data bucket called the MTFS. And in this particular scenario, what I can do is go away and create my baseline as it was, just as we've been doing. And then I've got a process in the system to go and copy the baseline, that data that we've just created in that bucket, into the MTFS bucket as an end user. So I can just launch that and it will pour the contents of the baseline data into the bucket called MTFS. And that then gives me the ability, of course, to then compare it. And in a very simple way, in a very manageable way, I've allowed the user to have a play area, a modeling area called baseline, and then a final review area called the MTFS. And then I can compare those figures. And considering I've just copied that and ignoring the fact that my formula isn't quite capturing the employee costs correctly, you can see that my baseline equals my MTFS data-wise, because I've just copied it across for each of the years. And of course now I can go back to my baseline and maybe model a different scenario. So for example, if we just do a really simple scenario, maybe change the supplies and services for next year to 140,000 to effect a change. When I then go back to my comparison, we should see a difference. So a very simple example, but an effective, simple way to allow end users to be able to scenario plan in a very succinct manner. So there we go, I've got my difference now. Excuse me. And I could make some high level changes to the MTFS as well, so if I wanted to make it some mild adjustments, I could do that as well. Excuse me. Right, so that's one method. Another method is called the sandboxing option in the Oracle Planning and Budgeting Cloud. The sandboxing option is a checkbox that you have available to you when you are creating the model. And for my example here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the adult social care detail that we looked at. Now I had 3 sheets. I drilled down into the source adult social care data, then I rolled it up into the care type, and then I overlaid the population details. What I've created here, just to make the demonstration a little bit easier, is I've created one form that has those 3 data types at the very top here. So here's my detailed adult social care data, here's my rolling up, very easy to see, and here's my population overlay. Okay, so very quickly let's refresh that. Sorry, let me just dive back in there and fire that up. Okay, so there's my adult social care detail. There we go. There's my my population overlay. Okay, so hopefully what you've noticed here already, excuse me, is I've got some further tabs, and these are my scenarios, my sandpits, my sandboxes. I've got a baseline, which is my standard data that we've been working on, but I've also created 2 scenarios. Excuse me. One is called worst case. If I click on that, I'll notice that it looks really similar, but I've got some highlighted cells that I've updated for my worst case. I've just been really simple here and updated my adult social care population needs for January, February and March, the winter months, as a higher percentage in my worst case. I could also update the tariffs or the population or any assumptions behind that. And my best case is slightly lower. So okay, that's great. I can also, if I click on next, what I've done is I've got a form that an end user can invoke to allow me to quickly compare those scenarios. And so I've got a graphical view of what those costs look like. I've also got the numerical value and the value of the worst case and best case against the baseline in terms of costs. And I've also got some averages here, the average age of individual within that particular scenario, and I can flip between different scenarios, the average cost, the average the average weekly estimate, so I can review those as well. Now, creating a new sandbox is really, really easy. You've got this little plus sign here. Excuse me. So I can just fire that. I can fire that up. Let's keep it simple. So I'm going to go into the population overlay, go to baseline, fire up a new sandbox, and just give it a name. So let's call it moderate. It could be, you could call it reduce it reduce the tariffs by 10%, whatever you want to call it. Press create, and that immediately creates a copy of that particular data set for you to be able to go and work on. So I can click on moderate, maybe go in again. I'll just focus in on my population needs, maybe 10% for that, 11% there, maybe 12% here. And I can use all the tools that I've seen before, the predictive planning tools. I can use my uplift tools to be able to, mass update my percentages. Maybe I'm looking at pay awards. I want to pick up a particular subset of grades of pay, for example, and uplift those. I could use the tools that you've seen in terms of top-down budgeting. And when I press save on that, notice that those turn orange again to say that those have been changes. And as soon as I click next and review my graphical comparison screen, notice that it's immediately updated with my sandpit. I've got my moderate view there, so I can just continue on there and have multiple scenarios, and they will automatically be reviewed and be able to be compared. Once I've decided that I want to maybe consolidate a particular scenario, I can do that. So if the worst case is the way it's going to go, there's my worst case, 15, 15, 16 on January, February, March. My baseline is 9%. If I want to go with my worst case, I can very quickly do that. I can go to actions, I can go to sandbox, and I can publish this. So I'm going to publish it, and what it will do is it will get rid of my worst case scenario, and it will consolidate it with my baseline. There it is, 15, 15, 16. So really quick to be able to consolidate those views. I don't have to have multiple spreadsheets which have lots of formulas interlinked and somehow try and consolidate that. The system can do that for me very, very efficiently. If I want to do a more discrete example, maybe for employee grades of pay or adult social care, I can go into my detail, maybe click on the age column, go into filter and say, well, show me everybody that's over 50 years old, for example, that has a current care cost of over let's say £100, and then again create an uplift for that, 10% uplift to 2% reduction, depending on what you wanted to do. I can add some comments, of course, to support that, as you've seen with the previous demo. So very quick to be able to create scenarios and consolidate them. And just to mention very quickly, I know we're running out of time here, but if you've got the time to stay on, that would be great. Another few minutes here. In our enterprise version, pre-packaged, we have got a modelling tools available. So in the enterprise version, which I'll quickly dive into, out of the box, what I'm going to show you is what's available in the system from day one. And that is a modelling tool set that probably looks very similar to what I've just shown you in terms of the sandbox feature, but maybe goes one step ahead here. You've got a strategic modelling area that allows you to create complete copies of your cubes. So maybe just not the data sets, the discrete data sets that I was looking at, but very quickly I can create a complete copy of one of the cubes with all the reports, all the forms, all the dashboards copied into a cube. I must say it's very easy to manage these, and the administrator can manage the creation of the sandboxes. So to avoid having lots of sandboxes and models and too much data in the system, that can be managed. Once I've created an entire copy of that model, I can start scenario planning in a very similar way to that you just saw, but maybe with some added benefits if you would agree here. So this is the out-of-the-box content. I've got some sales activity here in my commercial example, but also some expenses, as you can see here. And this is a medium-term financial plan. I've got lots of scenarios. I can very quickly create these just like I could before with my sandbox. But I've also got the ability to then uplift via growth rates through the years. and I can do that using out-of-the-box functions, account forecasts that allow me to forecast by growth rates, maybe forecasts by percentages, a percentage of another account, maybe just as per an actual value. So very quickly I can get my forecasts up and running. And then probably the best thing about this, I would say, is you have got your financial statements out of the box created for you. So my income statement, so I'll just clear this error that I've got on the screen here. The forecast, the income statement is immediately generated from my scenario. So this is a full income statement. I've also got a full balance sheet, full cash flow, and I can just drop into any scenario and have a look at the end impact of my decisions in my strategic plan. Just to suggest, I've also got an action called goal seek. So for example, I could go the other way around and say, although my operating profit is 80.97 here, what I'd like it to be is maybe 90, and I'd like you to try and make that goal using the account code, a particular account code, which could be maybe supplies and services, maybe it could be transport costs. I'll go with services revenue, and then suggest which years and periods it should try and adjust to try and make that goal. So automatically the system can try, in a scenario, try and produce a target for you. So very quickly, maybe if you're sitting in a boardroom trying to understand what savings you need to make, you'll be able to do that using the system to help you do that. And as I say, the balance sheet, the cash flow, all produced, all out of the box, and you've got the ability to then review your targets across your different business units, and very quickly then go and create your bottom-up plan for the next year budget using one of those scenarios. So yeah, I feel like I want to spend more time on this, but hopefully you've got the idea that the enterprise solution has the modelling capability that you saw in the sandboxing feature, but puts a lot of pre-built content on top of that out of the box. Okay, so very popular ways here that I've shown you, all popular, those three methods in terms of the inbuilt scenario planning capabilities within the system, allowing you to leverage the data held in the planning system really quickly, and allowing you to efficiently and effectively create, compare, and also publish those scenarios and what-if plans, allowing the whole organisation to be able to keep up to date with the latest plans. Hopefully I've demonstrated very, very efficiently at a click of a button. Okay, just to wrap up here, we and really going back to the last two sessions, we did mention some of the new developments that were up and coming that we mentioned. We talked about predictive planning and how that was going to be taken to the next level, where we as an end user were not invoking predictive planning. The predictive planning capabilities were running in the system behind the scenes, under the bonnet, constantly at all times, and surfacing some of the correlations, some of the extreme variances to the end user, so they could identify the root cause and automatically forecast if required from that. Some very exciting developments coming in terms of the artificial intelligence. Also, one step on from the business analytics mobile phone app that we saw is this automated bot here. We have the ability to ask the solution questions in terms of show me the data in the system, but not only show me the data in the system, but update maybe the forecast. So on the go, you can update the forecast, and hopefully what that means is the strategic managers are going to be far more informed if people on the ground can adjust the forecast because of something that's happened on the business on the ground far quicker than they could have before, allowing those strategic decisions to be taken far quicker, hopefully leading to better outcomes. So just trying to close very quickly, as I know we're running out of time, but just to summarise, hopefully what I've just reminded you of is the ability to collaboratively work in the system in a robust, flexible manner. We've got the assistive technologies to be able to help you plan and budget more efficiently. And hopefully what I've gone on to show you in this particular session is the scenario planning capabilities to take advantage of those data sets that are within your system, and rather than taking them offline to do separate plans, actually carry that out within the system. We mentioned in the previous sessions about the Customer Connect and how the power of the cloud can help lots of users with similar systems get together and actually share collateral, so share dashboards, share reports, and that was, in my view, a very powerful selling point about the cloud story in general. For the Oracle Cloud, what I tried to position was that Gartner, a leading institute, recognized Oracle as a proven leader in terms of planning, cloud financial planning and analytics solutions. So if you were going to join a community in the cloud for planning and budgeting, certainly you would be joining a very prestigious in Gartner's eyes in terms of the proven capabilities that Oracle brings. I also mentioned a bit on ROI analysis. I didn't even bring into this the IT saving costs, servers, also the IT individuals or the headcount that need to run a solution. The cloud obviously dispels those, but I looked at data inconsistencies, data consolidation, and we were really quite conservative on some of the savings regarding transparency of data and how we can make better decisions. Not 1%, but 0.01% brought huge savings, annual savings. So yeah, quite compelling in terms of being able to offset the cost of a system like this. And I would encourage you to if you've seen what you like and you think or you like what you've seen, then please do find out about the cost, because it's quite intriguing to offset it against not just the ROI in general, but actually the cost of a solution and the capabilities that I've shown you today. So do find out more from your account manager. So that was our scenario planning webinar. There is another one here on the 27th called Strategic Workforce Planning. That's next week, Wednesday. Please do join that. That goes on to show you how the planning of your individuals, your payroll individuals, your workforce that we've planned in the last couple of sessions in terms of the financial costs. What we'll do is go on to see how that translates into the workforce of the future. What skills have we currently got in the organisation? What skills do we need to look for? How are we going to bridge the workforce gap in terms of the people that we need to be able to meet the goals that we've set in our financial plans? I hope you found that informative in terms of a refresher, but also scenario planning. As I've mentioned in all my sessions, very quick to get these models up and off the ground. As it is a cloud-based solutions, we can spin these up very quickly, not like having to install an application on a server, etc. All that's removed. So 4 to 6 weeks is the usual time given for one of the models to be spun up. So yeah, please do contact me on the email address if you've got any questions. I think there is one question on the chat facility here. Is there a limit to the number of sandboxes that are available for use? No, there isn't a limit at the moment. That can be managed by the administrators, as I suggested. The users can obviously manage their own sandboxes, but no defined limit from my application's point of view. Might be worth pitching that to the technical Oracle team. So I'll go and find out if there is going to be an imposed limit in the future, or maybe there is something that I'm not sure about. So from my point of view, none that I know about, but I can go and find out from the technical team. So that's the only question posted online. And if you've got any more questions, please do fire them across to my email address. I'll leave that on there for a second. Hope you found that informative as I've suggested, and please do attend next week's webinar, the final in our series. Thank you very much for attending, and that's the end of the session.